Hello and welcome back to the Brit Iron podcast. Today, of course, we're running through our team rankings, and it's the 22nd team today, and that team is the New England Patriots. And of course, joined today by Matt and Sam, and we're very excited to talk about this team and this franchise and see how they're going to do this season. And for me, there's one big glaring question, and that is the quarterback position.
So we just want to address the recent news that Cam Newton has signed with the New England Patriots for the 2020 NFL season. In retrospect, we're not really sure this changes the average grading that we have the New England Patriots at, and we're going to leave them where they are in our rankings, but we do think that it massively increases the ceiling of this team. If you get MVP Cam, who comes out and fits well into Josh McDaniels' system, then we think that they could very well be a 10-11 win team, and you see them in the playoffs in January. However, we're going to leave them where they are in our rankings for the moment. The big difference I think that you'll see is on Cam's side here. He's fitting into an offensive system that's going to give him a lot more options to make changes at the line of scrimmage as opposed to what he was doing in Carolina. So I think you'll see a real uptick in what we see out of Cam and the football IQ that he really displays on the field. So I think that personally, I think there's a very big chance that we see a big year from Cam, maybe not statistically, but from what he actually puts on the field. So just thought we'd address the Cam issue before we went any further with this episode.
And do they really have an answer at QB? Is Jared Stidham the guy?
I'm going to hold off for a couple games before I make the call there. From what we've seen of him, no. I think he's thrown 4 passes in regular season NFL games, one of which was a pick 6, which is not the best numbers. But he's had a year in the system, and everything that's coming out of that camp says that they really like him, and they've so far not done anything to go out and sign a veteran. And it's not like there isn't players on the market. Cam Newton's still unsigned. Cap is swimming around in that kind of conversation as one of these guys that's still on the market to be picked up. They didn't make a play for Andy Dalton, which personally I was quite surprised at, as I think he's a guy that people know you can win with him, and they've got the defense to do it. So I would hold off on this to see if he's the answer. He may very well be. It's not unheard of for someone who's a later round pick in New England to come out and be pretty good. But I think that remains to be seen.
I think for me, where you've mentioned they didn't bring any vets, they kind of stuck with a guy they've had in the system. I think in what is known to be a complicated system, quite a unique offense in the NFL, I like keeping the guy that's been there under Brady. Even though it's just for a year, he's had a chance to learn the system with the guy who's created a fair chunk of that, or been heavily involved in the development of that system. Yeah. Which I think, although you could say, bringing in someone like Andy Dalton or Cam Newton, you might cut down on some of the mistakes, and they've more experience in the league, they know the league better. They don't know the offense in the same way, I'd argue. They haven't been sat around Brady in the same room as him week in, week out for a year. So I think, I don't know, he could still come out and it might just be, okay, Stidham's not the guy. But I think for now, I think they're doing the right thing. Especially on a cap front as well. I just like what they've done. They're in a spot that if this works, well, they look brilliant, don't they? And Belichick's like, Bill Belichick, aren't I? But they don't, and if it doesn't work, they haven't loaded themselves up on cap anyway. They haven't really lost anything apart from it's a late round pick. It didn't work out. And over the next couple years, they can really make a big effort to rebuild free agency and the draft. And it's almost like a soft reset. And if they're low enough this season, there's some quite nice quarterbacks coming out next year that I think there goes the next 20 years of the NFL, because Patriots are a dynasty again. But I think it's a great position for them to be in, and I think it's a great position for Stidham to be in. It's a chance they're practically written off already, but with the defense they've got there, and there's a couple of weapons, I think he can prove and win himself the job for at least another year or two while they can put some stuff in around him, and off the back of the defense, keeping him in games, meaning he doesn't have to do a lot. He just needs to not throw a game away, and they could have a decent little season.
That's kind of my worry for the franchise going forward, though, is the fact that with the defense that Belichick will have there, yes, they've lost a couple pieces. Van Noy is going to be particularly difficult to replace, and they do have some cap issues over the next year, the coming years, so they might struggle to add free agents in the right places and stuff like that. But we can probably it's probably a safe bet that defense is going to be a top 10 in the league defense, which means that they might only need a very average quarterback to get them to an 8-8 kind of record, and then they're not really in the position to take one of the up-and-coming young guys. They don't have the cap room to go out and get somebody else, and maybe they're kind of stuck in this limbo that teams do find them in, where they've got a guy who's good enough to win games, but isn't really a championship caliber player, and they just kind of find themselves floating. Kind of like where I'd say Tyrod Taylor is. He's not going to lose you games, but you probably don't want him throwing you to win a game.
I think the biggest thing for me is we've seen it in this year's draft. You can potentially pick up guys, the quarterbacks in the first round, that might not be the ones that come in and within the first year or two are like world beaters and look like that guy's going to win you a championship. But you can still get good quarterback talent in that first round. And I think this year, even if they go 8-8, they could make a move to get it. We know the Patriots love to almost trade out of the first. Could go the other way. There was almost talk of it this year at points of are they going to try it. They could maybe trade up a little bit, and if they could get any of, so there's probably I'd say almost a top 3 foreman. Obviously, there's Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. There's a few bits of talent there that they don't have to have a top 5 pick necessarily to get their franchise guy. But
I could really see Trey Lance being in that conversation for the Patriots. He's the kind of does not turn the ball over at all. Didn't turn the ball over once last season with an interception, which is outrageous. I think he threw like 26 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, which is mad. And he's North Dakota State, so he plays a slightly smaller school, but it's smash mouth football, tough kid. If he comes out and has a big year, and he's going to have the opportunity to really show himself off there at Oregon week 1, which I think is a really winnable game for North Dakota State. If they come out, they win that game, and then they go on another championship run in the FCS, he will probably be a first-round pick, and that is the kind of kid that I think really gritty football player that would be perfect in a Belichick system.
It sounds like a Belichick guy.
Yeah. But if they were to stick with Stidham, I think Belichick is the guy to get the best out of him.
This is what I was thinking as well. I could see, even if this year they kind of looks like they're going to float, if he just does enough, and he isn't the reason that they're not, let's say, at their ceiling, maybe a wild card team off that defense, then he could be developed. I think he's in a spot where the longer he's in that offense, the more time he's got to learn it and click. I think him and N'Keal Harry could almost become Brady Edelman, to have a sort of thing of a staple of a Patriots offense that pieces rotate all around them. They drafted some young tight ends as well. You almost got maybe some young guys that are going to click together, and then Belichick will just do what he's done always and just chop and change the pieces around them wherever he can find them, but play off a great defense and an efficient offense that has those years where it just goes off. But I think we'll know by week 8 what we've got from Stidham. I think that's a fair game sample to see, because I think at first it's a big old pair of shoes to fill. It's a big job to come in and take, and you might find the first few weeks takes a bit of time and is settling into it, and then starts to play at a better level. Or it might just be by week 8 you're like, they're tanking.
He's not the guy. So I guess that is a question where the answer will come down the line. Perhaps another question that we may find out early on, or maybe it will be down the line as well, is at the running back position, because I see that it's quite a stacked room at the moment. Obviously, James White, Sonny Michel, Damien Harris, Rex Burkhead, and Brandon Bolden in that room. Who do you guys think is going to be the starter for the Patriots at running back?
It's tough to say, isn't it?
Honestly, I think it could be a coin flip week to week.
Okay, let me rephrase that.
I really do.
Who would you like to see be the starter?
I think my head says Sonny Michel is the guy that I would assume will be at least from sort of the first couple of weeks, the guy who's more taking it. But I think that this is actually a running back run where there's a massive opportunity this year. You've got a good defense in play. You've got a quarterback who they need to see what they've got. I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots come out on a running team this year. They ease Stidham into it, and at least for the first half of the season, you're seeing them go heavy on the run game. That means even if they're doing what they've done before of swapping in multiple guys, there will be one of them, I think, that has value. And I would put it for me, this may be more of a fantasy style take on it, but I think Sonny Michel, if I'm taking a guy from the Patriots, it would be him for me for this year. I think it's a big opportunity for him.
Like I said, I think it's going to be a coin flip week to week. They quietly I think it's Damien Harris, is it? Yeah, Damien Harris. He was a second or a third round pick the year after they drafted Sonny Michel. Now, first of all, it's unlike Belichick to go and draft a running back in the first round, but then to draft another running back with high draft capital the year after, to me, suggests that he's not completely sold on Sonny Michel. You've still got Rex Burkhead there, who is going to eat into carries. James White is going to be the catching back, but he will still get carries out of the backfield. And the other thing as well is, they've what's his chops? The fullback that was there last year, and James Devlin. So James Devlin retires, but he has been used heavily over the years. So there's a fullback in that discussion as well. If Dan Vitale can come in and steal some carries from these other guys, goal line carries, lead blocking, that kind of thing, he will find himself on the field. So I think there are 5 running backs there that might all see regular use. And I think from a fantasy standpoint, I wouldn't want to touch any of them if I can avoid it. From a football standpoint, it's going to be really interesting to see, because I think you could see a lot of sets with multiple running backs in the backfield, and you don't know if they're going to be catching out the backfield, running out the backfield, what they're going to be doing. So I think you could see a lot of interesting things on offense with those running backs, but if I had to put money on any one of them starting week 1, at the moment it would be a complete guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I'm on the same boat as you there. I would probably be staying away in fantasy from any of those guys. However, one guy who I know, Sam, you're pretty hot on, in Kill Harry. Where do you value him in a draft? Are you taking him? I know you take running backs first couple of rounds, but whereabouts would you be looking to draft him in fantasy?
I'd take him late. I'd take him quite late. If it's a deep league and you've got a lot of spots on your bench, or you're in a dynasty, I think he's got some dynasty value.
A lot, yeah.
I really like him as a player, big body, red zone threat. He's got a lot of talent, but we just haven't seen enough from him, and we don't know what the offense is going to do. And because we don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball long term, and if for this season he's going to have a consistent quarterback throwing him the ball, I don't think you can go out and say, I'm going to draft him and I'm going to expect anything from him. But he is the kind of guy that would have big touchdown upside for me, because he is, in my opinion, a very talented guy. And at 6'2", it's not like he doesn't have the frame to go up and make some plays.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be taking him early with any expectations. Again, this is effectively his rookie year, because he dealt with injury in his first year.
I think for me, I'm taking Edelman over him all day long in a one season. In Dynasty, it's a different conversation. But I get the feeling Edelman, for me, as a fantasy asset, could be a very overlooked one for this year. I think he's not going to be being drafted particularly high. I think a couple of mocks I've seen him going around that 6 or 7 range, depending on who you've got in your draft, or it's 8-team or 12-team, all those sort of things. But around there, I think if I'm taking a piece of the Patriots offense, as you said, running back, if it's really late, maybe Michel, late on, but I don't want to put too much into him. He's more if I had to pick one. But I think if I'm taking a piece of this offense, it's Edelman all day. Because I think he's going to get overlooked and could be a guy you pick up, but it's a late guy that just comes through and does very well, gets a massive target share there, and just is a target monster.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few other guys as well on there. Mohamed Sanu, I see, is also on there. Worth a shout, but yeah, I mean, apart from those 3, maybe I don't see much value. But another position that perhaps the Patriots have been quite good at over the last few years, and now not so much, is tight end. I personally don't see any value there. Do you guys see any tight end value for the Patriots, or maybe is this one we're going to look to see the next few years?
I think not for this season. For me, I think you got to see how it plays out. They've drafted 2 guys. It was in the third. They took the 2 tight ends.
Yep.
And who's going to be? You don't know yet. You've got to see how it develops. I mean, if you really wanted to in a dynasty, yeah, fair enough, be sort of picking them up. Yeah. But I think they'll be on most, unless it's a new startup dynasty. Most of them, they're not going to be taken in the draft. They're going to be there as a waiver option. You got to see which gets on the right page with whichever quarterback it is. I think down the line, in maybe next year, maybe the year after, one of them might start to emerge as a tight end. But I think too many people are going to get caught up of thinking Patriots tight end, it's the second coming of Gronk or something like that. They think this guy's going to become an incredible tight end. You don't know that just because they've been taken on that team that has traditionally given the tight end a lot of work. I wouldn't be drawn into any of that for this season.
No, I think realistically, if you're taking any player off of this offense for your fantasy team, you have to be realistic with what you're expecting from them.
Yeah.
Yes, there is the possibility, and we all have to admit the fact that Josh McDaniels is a very good offensive coordinator, and Bill Belichick is a very good head coach who has won a lot of games. But Tom Brady is not there anymore. That offense will not be the same. Whether his arm was weakening and his play was declining, at the end of the day, that's still Tom Brady. I would take Tom Brady at his worst over a lot of other guys that have played in the league over the years, and you'd get much better results. I think because we don't really know what we're getting with Stidham, and unless you've been in that building and you've seen 16 weeks in a training camp from last season of Jarrett Stidham and you think, wow, this guy really can do it, from what we've seen, he's shown like he had some bright sparks in last preseason, and then he looked terrible when he got on the field in the regular season. So I'm not thinking, oh yes, I want to get that. They're the kind of tight ends that if mid-season it turns out they're actually a really good team, and one of these tight ends is emerging as their number 3 receiving guy, you pick them up off the waiver wire and you spend your fab on them. That's what the fab's there for.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be touching, other than Edelman, I wouldn't be touching anyone on this roster in a draft with a 6-foot pole.
I think for me, the biggest fantasy piece of value, or the best fantasy asset on this team, is that defense. I wouldn't be surprised if, unless Stidham or someone has like a very kind of takes over that seat, that hot seat as the quarterback, and plays the predominant number of games, you might even be looking at the defense being up there within the top 3 highest scoring assets. Their point total. I think that defense is going to be. You think about it, in some years you've seen teams with inconsistent quarterback play, which normally leads to more turnovers. The defenses get a boost because they're just on the field more. They're put in more positions where they've got to do something. And I think you could see that a lot with this Patriots defense. If they're going to be out on the field a bit more, they're going to be relied on heavily. And I think they're going to keep going and be potentially a bit of a monster this year. So I think that's probably the best bit of fantasy value you're going to get off of this team. If your league even runs a defense, is them. But you get, again, that's something you'll put maybe your last or second to last pick on.
The only thing I would say about the Patriots defense is while they are stacked and they're a very good defense, a lot of their best players on that defense they're an aging defense. They've lost some key pieces this season just gone, and you look at their best player last year, Stephon Gilmore, 29. That's getting up there for a cornerback. At some point there is going to be some regression there. Jason McCourty, one of their other cornerbacks, 32. They've got quite a lot of aging players. A lot of the Donta Hightower, 30. They're getting up there. So I think it'll be interesting to see if some of the younger guys in this defense can kind of establish themselves and keep everything rolling, because some of the older guys aren't going to be able to play as much, especially if the defense is on the field more. So there's a couple of guys on that defense that I'll be really interested to see if they establish themselves. Chase Winovich coming out of Michigan last year, he's got real potential, and I think he'll get a lot of snaps this year. And they've got a couple of guys like that who are going to get all of the opportunity to do it. So it'll be really interesting to see if they can go out and do it.
I think for me as well, the biggest thing to remember on the defense, regardless of them aging, and I think for this year, I don't think regression will become an issue on that defense. It's a Belichick defense. They can lose the big names. It's what Belichick does. He just seems to be able to bring people in, get them into the system, especially more on the defensive side of the ball. It's been a staple of Belichick, is he makes it work, and he makes it work to a high level, which is why I sort of give him an edge as a defense. And I think 29, 30, 32 isn't as massive of a deal for this, talking about it as, let's say, in a one-season draft taking the Patriots. it's not like it's on Madden where they hit 30 and instantly they regress, sort of thing.
No.
This is real. Like, I don't think it's as big of an issue. But I think at the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see. But for me, it's a Belichick defense that's got good pieces. It's got young guys there. And he's going to have them playing good football. Because if they're going to win or do anything, like have a positive season, 8-8 or anything more, it's going to be off the defense. So I think Belichick's going to have them playing football.
Ultimately. Yeah, and ultimately, just to wrap it up, for fantasy, I think, unless you're looking at Edelman or that Patriots defense, I think be very cautious.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's sort of the glowing review for this team.
However,
of course, that is all we've got time for today, unfortunately. I know we could go on for a lot longer. However, be sure to check us out on YouTube. Go like, comment, and subscribe. Also, head over to Instagram and check us out. We're at the Brit Iron. And it's the same for Twitter as well. And I know we're in the process as well, as we've mentioned many a time now, of setting up a listener league, which we'd love for you guys to get involved with. So yeah, check out that, and also register your interest for it as well, so we know numbers and whatnot. But yeah, that's all we've got time for today. So we'll see you soon.
See ya.